He walked into the teacher's lounge with a stack of lesson plans for low-income students, only to find them shredded and dumped in the trash. The principal stood over him, smirking, calling it a charity stunt in front of the entire staff. But before anyone could laugh, a quiet janitor at the door whispered, "I recognize those formulas, and everything about this pity project was about to flip upside down." Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Marcellus Kane stood rigid in the hallway, outside Principal Hargrove's office, shoulders squared, palms pressed lightly to his sides. He had arrived at Meadowbrook High just that morning, the first day of classes, carrying a stack of project proposals under his arm. The linoleum floors glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. He glanced once at the trophy case, gleaming awards for robotics, debate, science fairs, and thought quietly, one day, we'll be in here too. He had grown up in East Newark, a neighborhood where opportunity was thin and ambition had to survive on scraps. He had walked the long way to school, tutored himself in advanced math from old books nobody else bothered with, and kept his voice low so as not to draw undue attention. Yet here he was, at a white-majority, affluent suburban school, newly hired as the STEM teacher with charge of after-school clubs. He was not loud, but his mind always calculated, always observed. In the office, Principal Hargrove sat behind a polished mahogany desk, leaning back, fingers steepled. The office smelled of polished wood, fresh coffee, and lingering tension. The walls were lined with framed accolades, top school in the county, best faculty, excellence in education. Marcellus entered, cleared his throat, and placed his proposal packet on the surface. "Good morning, Mr. Kane," Hargrove said, neutral tone. His eyes flicked over Marcellus's neatly pressed suit, the trim of his tie. "I've glanced at your file. You've had an impressive academic record and prior teaching experience, though I confess I expected a more experienced candidate for this role." Marcellus's heart tightened at the implication. "I understand expectations were high. I'm eager to prove myself here, sir." "Let's get to it," Hargrove said. "Tell me about this after-school project you propose." Marcellus took a breath. He leaned forward a bit, collecting both courage and composure. "I want to launch a STEM equity lab for underserved students in the district, especially students from low-income backgrounds, many of whom have potential but lack resources. I propose weekend workshops, mentorships, and building real prototype projects. We'll partner with local universities, invite guest speakers, and give these students a pathway into competitive STEM fields." He paused, assessing the reaction. Hargrove's face was blank. Then he released a shallow laugh. "A STEM equity lab? You mean a pity parade? A showpiece for folks who can't keep up? Meadowbrook isn't here to hand out trophies to underachievers," Hargrove said, voice laced with condescension. He leaned forward, pressing a finger on Marcellus's packet. "Frankly, Miss Kane, this sounds like charity. Our goals are excellence, not sentimentality." Marcellus's throat tightened. His mouth went dry. He swallowed. He forced calm. "With respect, sir, I don't see this as charity. I see it as unlocking untapped potential. Many of those students never get exposure to lab equipment, mentors, or even someone who believes in them." Hargrove raised a hand, cutting him off. "Belief isn't my job. This school's reputation is built on measurable metrics: test scores, competition wins, publications, donor prestige. I can't have after-school experiment programs dragging down our image." Marcellus felt a spark of indignation. His pulse quickened, but he held his ground. "We'll fund the lab ourselves. I'll seek grants, corporate sponsors, community partnerships. The school's finances won't be touched." "That's cute," Hargrove sneered. "You really think you can beg and grovel for money? I've seen dozens of idealistic teachers like you crash. You won't last a semester pushing dreams." Then he leaned back, arms crossed. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Kane. We'll be in touch." Marcellus nodded, turned, and left. The door closed behind him, with a soft click. In the hallway, other faculty passed by, some offering polite nods, a few glances, mostly indifferent eyes. He caught the eyes of Miss Potts, the English teacher, who gave him a small sympathetic look. He managed a faint, tight smile. In his small classroom down the hall, he placed the proposal packet carefully in a drawer. Underneath his stoic exterior, his chest felt heavy. He returned to his duties, greeting students, taking attendance, setting up lab equipment for the day's lesson. But his mind spun. Throughout the morning, murmurs spread among students. New teacher seems intense. He asked for after-school labs. Wonder why the principal shut him down already. Tiny threads of gossip, but none yet knew the full story. By lunchtime, Marcellus ducked into the staff lounge. He poured coffee and stood near the window, watching students in the quad. Two black freshmen, eyes bright, passed by, one carrying a physics problem sheet. Marcellus thought of them. He thought of all the others who never got such chances. During the empty hour before afternoon classes, he quietly made a plan. He would salvage the project. He would find a way. He would not be silenced. He scribbled lists, possible corporate donors, alumni contacts, local universities, equipment needs, student roster. He even sketched the lab layout on scrap paper. Underneath the surface of defeat, he was building. Later that afternoon, in the staff meeting, Hargrove addressed the faculty. I want efficiency, results, and prestige. Any after-school program must be approved by the central board before we host it. No new initiatives without review. There was a murmur. Marcellus listened quietly, disguised disappointment in his composure. Afterwards, a few teachers approached him in hushed tones. Miss Potts said quietly, "You have guts, Marcellus. Don't let them extinguish your fire." Another teacher, Mr. White, offered academic contacts, small gestures. He accepted them with gratitude, though his spirit still ached. As dusk crept in and the corridors emptied, Marcellus lingered in the lab. He switched on the lights, booted up computers, tested sensors, piled spare parts he'd collected from district surplus bins. He whispered to himself, "One day, those trophies in that case will bear names from here." The building was silent except for the hum of machinery and his breathing. He adjusted a microcontroller, soldered a circuit, ran code tests. He felt alive in that quiet fight. Meanwhile, unknown to him, a student, Tanya Rivera, a sophomore with a hidden talent for video editing and a passionate voice, had slipped into the hallway earlier. She had heard the humiliating exchange in the principal's office, had seen Hargrove mock Marcellus. She backed into a corner, phone in hand, and recorded the entire exchange from a stable angle through the partially open door. Her fingers trembled. She watched Marcellus leave, his posture stiff with pride and pain. Tanya's mind raced. She believed in Marcellus's project already, had long seen the gap in opportunity for kids like her. She framed the video, staying quiet until the most damning line, Hargrove's mocking pity parade. She recorded the timestamp, captured staff faces in the background, then she slipped away. Back in the lab, Marcellus tested a sensor array. A light flickered on his setup. He tightened a loose connection. He leaned in, eyes focused. He felt the weight of a long road before him. He thought of the principal's laughter, the sneer on Hargrove's face, the fragile hopes of students who deserved more. Outside, Tanya hurried away into a quiet stairwell. She activated her phone's upload settings to the student-run social channel, Voices of Meadowbrook, a hub where students post anonymously. She uploaded the recording with a caption, "Principal Hargrove laughs at new black teacher's plan, calls it a pity parade." A moment later, the upload completed. The icon spun. Tanya exhaled, heart pounding. If this went viral, the school might have to answer for it. If it backfired, she risked disciplinary action. But she believed the truth had to be seen. A minute after, her phone buzzed. Comments already. "Shut up. That can't be real. Link it. I hope that's not our principal." Tanya bit her lip and watched more views trickle in. She pressed the share button again. Meanwhile, Marcellus in the lab flicked off one component, tension easing in his shoulders for the first time in hours. He packed up his kit carefully, microcontroller, wires, tools. He placed them in a worn canvas bag. He stood stretched. The corridor light was dim, the building nearly empty. He left, closing the lab door behind him. He paused in the hallway, as if sensing something, but heard only the quiet hum of HVAC vents and distant footsteps echoing in adjacent halls. He walked toward the exit. Only later, deep into the night, would he learn the recording had gone live. Only later would the school scramble to spin, to silence, to censor. But in that moment, as he walked into darkness, the seed of reckoning had already been planted. Unknown to Marcellus, the video had gone live, and by morning, local news outlets were already calling Meadowbrook High to demand comment. The next morning dawned gray and damp, a mist clinging to the parking lot of Meadowbrook High, like a veil of anticipation. Marcellus arrived before the first bell, carrying his worn canvas bag and a quiet resolve. He had no idea that overnight, his humiliation had become public property. By the time he stepped into the hallway, students were already whispering. Phones lit up in small huddles. Screens flashed with a thumbnail of Principal Hargrove's face mid-laugh. Marcellus's slumped shoulders in the corner of the frame. Someone had overlaid the caption, "Pity Parade." The clip had been posted to the Voices of Meadowbrook account at midnight, and by sunrise it had over 10,000 views, mostly from students, alumni, and their families. Inside his classroom, Marcellus set down his bag and began arranging the day's lesson. His hands trembled slightly as he aligned lab notebooks, though he still didn't know why. He was about to log onto the school's network when an email pinged his phone. Subject: "We need to talk. Sender: Principal Hargrove." His stomach tightened. Down the hall, students whispered in stairwells. "That's him. That's the new teacher. He's the one from the video." Tanya Rivera, the sophomore who had posted the clip, sat rigid in her first period desk, pretending to take notes but secretly refreshing her feed. The video had begun spilling beyond Meadowbrook now. Retweets from education activists, shares on Facebook groups about equity in schools, and even a comment from a verified account. Shameful behavior from leadership at a top public school. At 10 a.m., Marcellus was summoned to the office. The secretaries avoided his gaze. Inside, Hargrove sat with two other administrators, Ms. Ellis from HR, and Mr. Compton from the district PR department. Their expressions were rehearsed neutrality. "Mr. Kane," Hargrove began, voice measured but tight, "we're dealing with a situation that could reflect poorly on this institution." Marcellus's eyebrows knitted. "What situation?" Hargrove slid a printout across the desk. It was a screenshot of the video, caption blazing. Marcellus exhaled slowly. "I wasn't aware this was online. I didn't post it." Ellis leaned in, her tone clinical. "Be that as it may, public perception is critical. The video makes it appear you were promoting unapproved programs and disrupting established protocol." Marcellus blinked. "I was proposing an after-school project. I followed the process." Hargrove's voice hardened. "Your behavior came across as confrontational. We have donors, board members, and parents contacting us already. This cannot continue." Marcellus felt the room tilt. "Confrontational?" he said, quieter now. "I was laughed at." Compton from PR slid a sheet forward. A prepared statement. "We're releasing this to local media. It frames the incident as a misunderstanding. We'll clarify that Mr. Kane, while passionate, presented a premature initiative without proper channels. We'll emphasize the school's commitment to diversity." The words blurred on the page. Commitment to diversity. Misunderstanding. Passionate. Marcellus realized with a cold clarity. They were rewriting the story to make him the problem. "I won't sign this," he said finally. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "You're a probationary hire, Mr. Kane. Refusing to cooperate could jeopardize your position." Marcellus stood, his hands steady now. "Then do what you need to do. But I won't lie." He walked out, heart hammering. The hallway was buzzing louder now. Students had clearly seen more online. Someone whispered, "He's trending." Someone else muttered, "They're gonna fire him." By lunch, the video had reached regional news outlets. Channel 8 News ran a segment, "Controversy at Meadowbrook High." They played the clip, blurring Tanya's angle but leaving Hargrove's voice intact. "Pity Parade." They interviewed a few anonymous students who spoke about unequal opportunities. The anchor closed with, "The district has yet to comment." That evening, Marcellus sat alone in his small apartment, the blinds drawn. His phone buzzed incessantly, text messages from college friends, old colleagues, even his mother. "Are you okay? I saw something on the news." He typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. He felt both exposed and invisible at once. Back at Meadowbrook, the administration held an emergency meeting. The district superintendent dialed in via speakerphone. Compton from PR advised immediate suspension of the after-school project to reduce optics of favoritism. Hargrove readily agreed. "We'll put him on administrative review. It'll blow over." Ms. Potts, the English teacher, raised a timid objection. "But the footage clearly shows you mocking him." Hargrove snapped. "We're protecting the school's reputation. Are you with us or not?" Potts fell silent. The next morning, Marcellus arrived to find a notice taped to his classroom door. "After-school STEM initiative, suspended pending review." Students lingered nearby, murmuring. Tanya approached, guilt heavy in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think they'd twist it like this." Marcellus managed a tired smile. "You didn't do anything wrong. You showed the truth. But they're saying you're unprofessional," she said. He didn't answer. He entered his classroom and closed the door. By midweek, the story escalated further. Channel 8 had scheduled a follow-up interview with Marcellus. He prepared notes, determined to speak calmly about his vision for the STEM lab. But an hour before airtime, the station called to cancel. "Legal issues," the producer said vaguely. "We're pulling the segment for now." That night, Tanya discovered that the original video link on Voices of Meadowbrook had been flagged for privacy violations. It was still circulating on other platforms, but the original had vanished. She messaged Marcellus, "They're trying to bury it." Marcellus typed back, "They won't succeed forever." Still, the pressure was mounting. Parents began emailing the school board, some in support, others angry about radical programs. Donors threatened to withdraw. Hargrove released a new statement emphasizing Meadowbrook's commitment to excellence and inclusion, but framed Marcellus's program as well-intentioned but misguided. An unexpected twist arrived Thursday evening. A well-known education blogger wrote an article titled, "When Excellence Masks Exclusion, The Meadowbrook Story." It included leaked internal emails, apparently from a sympathetic staff member, showing Hargrove instructing PR to make Kane look naive. The piece went viral overnight, sparking thousands of comments. Marcellus read it at his kitchen table. Stunned, someone inside was risking their job to defend him. He felt a flicker of solidarity, but also fear. If the district went on the offensive, they might dig into his past, twist anything they could find. On Friday morning, as students poured into the building, a hush followed him down the hall. Some nodded supportively, others avoided eye contact. A few whispered, "Hero," "troublemaker." The labels were already forming. In his classroom before first period, Miss Potts slipped in. "They're holding another meeting today. They want to suspend you." Marcellus rubbed his temples. "I expected as much." "You should know," she added softly. "Someone from MIT called the main office asking about you." He looked up sharply. "MIT? That's what I heard," she said. "Admissions. They asked who you were, what program you're running." Hargrove looked furious. Marcellus stared at the floor, heart racing. MIT, why would they be calling him now? He felt a strange mix of hope and apprehension, as if a door had cracked open somewhere he couldn't see. That afternoon, as the dismissal bell rang and students streamed out, the phone on his desk buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Kane?" The voice was crisp, formal, but curious. "This is an admissions officer from MIT. We've seen something online. We'd like to know more about you." Marcellus's breath caught. The hallway outside was noisy with footsteps, but inside his classroom the world went still. The call continued. "Who exactly are you, Mr. Kane? And what are you building?" The phone call from MIT haunted Marcellus for the rest of the day. He replayed the officer's crisp voice in his mind. "Who exactly are you, Mr. Kane? And what are you building?" He had answered cautiously, explaining only that he was a new hire at Meadowbrook High with a vision for a STEM equity lab. The caller had thanked him for his time, and hung up with a vague, "We'll be in touch." But the seed of possibility mixed with danger was planted. If MIT had seen the video, others had too. That evening, long after the last bus had departed and the hallways had fallen silent, Marcellus unlocked the door to the unused chemistry lab on the east wing of the school. It smelled of old chalk dust and faint ammonia. Boxes of outdated textbooks lined one wall. The ceiling lights flickered softly. He slipped inside like a trespasser in his own workplace, heart pounding. This room had become his sanctuary. Here, no PR consultants, no board members, no donors dictated what he could build. His laptop glowed on the counter, code scrolling across the screen. On the tables lay microcontrollers, sensors, donated circuit boards, and a stack of lesson plans for students who might one day sit here. He rolled up his sleeves and began working. His project, tentatively named Project Horizon, was an interdisciplinary STEM platform. It would teach students to code, build simple robots, and run physics experiments using low-cost materials. Tonight he was refining a machine learning module, an algorithm that could predict environmental patterns based on sensor input. He tapped at the keyboard, squinting at a line of stubborn code. Footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway. Marcellus froze, listening. At this hour, the only people in the building were the custodial staff. He resumed typing. But after a moment, he felt eyes on him. Working late, he spun around. In the doorway stood a custodian, a man in his late 50s with dark skin, a slight stoop, and eyes that seemed older than his face. He wore a navy uniform, with a name patch. Eli. He leaned lightly on a mop handle but didn't look hurried. Just finishing some work, Marcellus said. You're Booker, the man said. Eli Booker. Been here longer than most teachers. This is my wing to clean. Marcellus offered a polite nod. Sorry if I'm in the way. Eli stepped inside, gaze flicking across the scattered parts and glowing screen. Looks like you're building something serious. Marcellus hesitated, then said quietly, It's a project for students. An after-school lab. Got shut down officially, but I'm not ready to let it go. Eli gave a small, knowing smile. They always shut down the things that matter. He began mopping near the door, silent for a while. Marcellus returned to his code, but the line of logic refused to work. He muttered under his breath, Why won't you converge? He scribbled variables on a scrap of paper. Brow for. Behind him, Eli spoke softly. You're using a gradient descent with too high a learning rate. That's why it's overshooting. Marcellus turned, startled. I'm sorry? Eli set the mop aside, walked closer, and peered at the code. His finger hovered just above the keyboard. Here, lower this value. Add a regulation term. It'll stabilize. Marcellus blinked. You know machine learning? Eli's mouth quirked. A little. Marcellus adjusted the code as suggested. The error graph smoothed instantly. The algorithm ran flawlessly. He stared at the screen, then at Eli. That worked. How did you? The custodian straightened, eyes flicking with something like amusement. Once upon a time, before all this, I was a grad student. Worked on predictive modeling. Long story. Marcellus felt the hairs on his arms lift. MIT? He asked, half joking. Eli's smile faded. Something like that. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of old fluorescent lights filling the room. Why are you here? Marcellus asked finally. Eli shrugged. Life. One wrong accusation. A door slammed. Another door opened. You know how it is. Marcellus looked at him, really looked at him. The stooped shoulders, the careful way he moved, the slight hesitation in his voice, like someone used to carrying invisible weight. He recognized it. I'm sorry, Marcellus said quietly. Don't be, Eli replied. I've been cleaning these halls for decades, watching kids come and go. Most of them never see me. But I see them. I saw you too. You're trying to give them something they don't even know they're missing. Marcellus's throat tightened. I'm trying. They're shutting it down. Eli tapped the counter lightly. Then build it where they can't shut it down. You'd be surprised how much can happen after hours. For the next hour, Eli lingered while Marcellus worked. He offered small suggestions, an optimization here, a memory-saving trick there. He was careful, almost reluctant, as if revealing parts of himself long buried. At one point, Marcellus asked, Why didn't you go back to research? Eli chuckled without humor. You ever try to get a recommendation letter from someone who thinks you're trouble? You ever try to clear a record after a false charge? Doors don't reopen once they've decided you don't belong. Marcellus stared at the circuit board. He thought of his own precarious position, the emails from the district, the press releases, rewriting his story. He thought, this is my future if I let them win. By midnight, they had a working prototype of the sensor module. Marcellus felt a surge of exhilaration. This is it, he said. This could really teach kids how to model real data. Eli wiped his hands on a rag. Then let's teach them. Unexpectedly, the door creaked open again. Tanya stepped in, eyes wide. I saw the lights, she said. I wanted to help. She looked between the two men. Is this the lab? Marcellus hesitated, then nodded. It's a start. Eli studied her for a moment, then said, You're the one who posted the video. Tanya flushed. Yeah, I'm sorry if it caused trouble. Marcellus smiled faintly. Trouble was already here. You just made people see it. They worked together for another hour, Tanya assembling small components while Marcellus coded and Eli reviewed the math. It felt for a moment like the lab he had dreamed of, students learning, mentors guiding, ideas sparking in the dark. When they finally packed up, Eli handed Marcellus a folded scrap of paper. Just in case you ever want to look me up, he said. Don't share it. Marcellus tucked it into his pocket without looking. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, Eli replied. Build first. Thank later. After Tanya left, Marcellus sat alone in the lab, the glow of the laptop casting long shadows. He pulled out the scrap of paper and unfolded it. Inside, written in neat handwriting, was a full name, Elijah D. Booker. Curiosity prickled at him. He opened his laptop, typed the name into an academic search engine. The results loaded slowly, then appeared. His eyes widened. At the top of the list was a research paper dated Predictive Modeling of Dynamic Systems Using Neural Networks. Authors, Elijah D. Booker, MIT Department of Computer Science. Marcellus scrolled further. More papers, citations, a promising academic trajectory ending abruptly around 1994. No explanation. He sat back, heart pounding. The custodian who mopped his floors had once been a rising MIT researcher. Marcellus stared at the screen. What happened to Eli Booker, and why had his name disappeared from the world of science for 3 decades? Marcellus stared at the screen, rereading the name for the 5th time. Elijah D. Booker, MIT Department of Computer Science, class of... The citations were dense with technical language and mathematical models, well beyond his own graduate training. But the brilliance behind the work was unmistakable. Eli hadn't just been a student, he'd been on track to become a pioneer. He leaned back in the glow of the lab's computer, the whir of its old fan filling the silence. Why had no one ever spoken his name here? Why was Eli mopping floors instead of publishing papers? The next evening, Marcellus brought a printed copy of one of the papers. When Eli arrived for his custodial shift, he said nothing at first, just placed the paper gently on the table. Eli glanced at it, expression unreadable. You dug that up? You didn't just know machine learning, Marcellus said quietly. You helped invent it. Eli gave a small, weary smile, more resignation than pride. Wasn't ready for what came after. They sat in silence for a while, both men aware the moment was too heavy to rush. Finally, Marcellus asked, "What happened?" Eli stared at the far wall, as if trying to remember a past he had spent years trying to forget. I was 23. Second year of my PhD. Had already co-authored 2 major papers. My advisor, white, tenured, respected, started taking credit for my ideas. I pushed back, quietly at first. Then I wrote to the department chair. Then the dean. He paused. That was my mistake. Marcellus leaned forward, barely breathing. They turned it around on me. Said I was confrontational. Disrespectful. One incident where I raised my voice got spun into a hostile outburst. I was accused of violating the university's community standards. No due process. They suspended me, mid-semester. Revoked my funding. I tried to appeal. They closed the case. Eli's voice was calm, but Marcellus saw the pain behind it. I didn't have money. My family couldn't fight it. MIT cut me off, and the academic world closed its doors right after. What did you do? Came home. Took whatever work I could. Janitorial openings had benefits. I needed something stable. Been here since. Marcellus felt the sharp ache of rage and sadness in equal measure. One of the sharpest minds he had ever encountered had been erased, quietly and completely. You should still be teaching, he said. Eli shook his head. Doors like that don't open back up. They just repaint them. But unknown to either of them, something was opening. That week, the MIT admissions officer, who had first called Marcellus, had forwarded a quiet memo through internal channels. It had found its way to Dr. Natalie Chiang, a mathematics professor and head of MIT's diversity initiative. She read the transcript of the video, watched the leaked interview clips, then paused when she saw the name Eli Booker. She remembered it. Barely. A name that came up once in a graduate seminar as a cautionary tale. Someone brilliant, but uncooperative. She dug deeper, found the papers. She read through each one, stunned. Then she found the expulsion records, buried under disciplinary archives. They told one story, but the papers told another. She made a decision. Quietly, without announcement, she booked a train ticket to New Jersey. 3 days later, as Marcellus was cleaning circuit boards in the lab, Eli entered looking rattled. You expecting someone? No, Marcellus said. Why? There's a woman here, Eli said. Says she's from MIT. Marcellus stood abruptly. Now? They walked to the front of the building, where the secretary's desk sat unmanned, waiting in the foyer, was a petite woman in her late 40s, dressed plainly, with a backpack slung over one shoulder. She turned as they approached. "Elijah Booker?" she asked. Eli froze. "Yes, I'm Dr. Chang, mathematics faculty, MIT. I came to speak with you." Eli's lips parted slightly, as if trying to decide whether to run or laugh. After all this time, she gave a small, respectful nod. "It's long overdue." They led her back to the lab, where the tables were still cluttered with wires, notes and tools. She walked slowly, as if absorbing every inch. "I read your 1993 paper 3 times, she said to Eli. "It's still relevant. You were ahead of your time." "I was ahead of their tolerance," Eli replied, tone-edged. She nodded again. "I know. I'm not here to ask you to forget that. I'm here because we need minds like yours again. And because I think what you're building here," she glanced at Marcellus, "matters more than anything I've seen in years." They talked for over an hour. She asked questions, not about the past, but about the present, the vision for Project Horizon, the student demographics, the technical specs of the prototype. Eli answered sparingly at first, then with more detail. Eventually he couldn't stop. Dr. Chiang listened closely. "I can't make promises about institutions, but I can open a door." Discreetly, MIT is quietly funding innovation fellowships for community-based projects. I could arrange for a satellite mentorship grant. Unofficial for now, but real. Marcellus looked at Eli. "You'd be the mentor." Eli hesitated. "To who?" Dr. Ching smiled. "To whoever needs you. Maybe even to MIT faculty who never knew how badly we failed someone like you." The offer was left on the table, not a clean redemption arc, but a slow unfolding of possibility. As she packed up to leave, she said to Marcellus, "We'll be watching. Carefully. Don't let them bury this." Marcellus walked her to the door, then returned to the lab, heart pounding. Later that night, while updating the lab's prototype module, he noticed something odd, an unfamiliar folder in the shared teacher drive. Inside it was a short memo: "Unregistered activities ongoing in East Wing potentially violating school safety protocols." The file had no signature, but the metadata revealed the author, Miss Rebecca Lindell, a new teacher from the science department. She'd joined the staff just 2 weeks prior. At the top of the note was a subject line: "They're still running that black charity thing." Marcellus stared at the screen in stunned silence. Someone inside the school had already reported them to Hargrove, and this time it wasn't just gossip. It was a formal accusation. The folder was still open on Marcellus's laptop, the words etched in digital stone. "They're still running that black charity thing." He stared at the screen in silence. It wasn't just the content of the message. It was the venom in the phrasing, the casual racism masked as concern. Black charity thing. As if what they were building, what Eli had dedicated his rediscovered brilliance to, wasn't innovation, wasn't science, wasn't real. Rebecca Lindell. The name was unfamiliar, barely registered until now. A new hire in the science department, fresh from grad school, apparently already eager to climb. Marcellus clicked through the folder's metadata again, but the access trail had already been scrubbed. Someone had cleaned up after her, likely tipped her off. The file's creation timestamp was 2 days ago. Hargrove must have already seen it. The next morning passed in slow, heavy silence. Every door he opened, every hallway he crossed, felt watched. Students still nodded to him, quiet allies in a war they didn't fully understand. But among staff, glances darted away. Conversations paused mid-sentence. The atmosphere had shifted. By fourth period, Tanya slipped into his classroom with her head down. She didn't speak, just handed him a slip of folded paper. "Be ready," it said. "Ready for what?" he whispered, but she was already walking out. He didn't wait long for the answer. At 1:12 p.m., as he was supervising a robotics demo with 2 students, the intercom crackled. "All teaching staff and media personnel, please report to the East Wing Chemistry Lab for a special announcement." Media. Marcellus froze. He locked eyes with the students, then quietly powered down the board. "Put everything away," he told them gently. "Now." He rushed to the lab. Inside, the space was pristine. Too pristine. The tools were stacked neatly, the circuit boards arranged as if on display. Tanya stood near the back, wide-eyed. Eli was nowhere to be seen. Then the doors opened. Principal Hargrove strode in, flanked by 2 school board members, and a man in a navy suit, who held a camera crew at his heels. They walked with purpose, every step rehearsed. The suit announced himself loudly, This is for District Transparency Media Review. Begin rolling. Hargrove's voice boomed. Good afternoon. As part of our ongoing commitment to safety and excellence, we are here today to address an unauthorized operation occurring within Meadowbrook's facilities. Marcellus stood tall, but his chest tightened. He tried to speak, but Hargrove raised a hand without looking at him. What you're seeing here, Hargrove said to the camera, is a prime example of unregulated use of school resources by an employee acting without approval. While we encourage innovation, it must follow process. Mr. Kane, unfortunately, chose to disregard that. Marcellus stepped forward. That's not true. Hargrove spun toward him, eyes flaring. Mr. Kane, this is not your platform. This is an official district statement. The cameraman panned to Marcellus, catching him mid-expression, betrayed, boxed in, outnumbered. Mr. Kane has repeatedly failed to comply with administrative guidelines. Hargrove continued. He has involved students without clearance, compromised building safety protocols, and operated under the illusion of legitimacy. Therefore effective, immediately he turned dramatically toward Marcellus. You are placed on indefinite administrative suspension pending investigation. There was a pause. The camera zoomed in. You will vacate all school property by 3 p.m. Marcellus didn't move. His jaw clenched, but he didn't give them a show. Then, from the back, a voice rang out. This isn't about protocols. This is about power. It was Tanya. Heads turned. Hargrove raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. You didn't care when the chess club used this room last year. After hours, she said, voice steady. You didn't care when the Science Olympiad team stayed here overnight. But now it's a black teacher helping poor kids, and suddenly it's safety violations. A beat passed. Hargrove forced a smirk. Miss Rivera, you're out of line. No, she said. You are. The cameraman shifted uncomfortably. The board members exchanged a glance. Marcellus turned to Tanya. It's okay. No, it's not, she said, eyes welling. They're erasing you. I'm not letting them. By 2:30 p.m., his classroom was empty. His desk was cleared. He carried out the last of his belongings in a worn leather bag, the same one he had brought on his first day. Still no sign of Eli. In the parking lot, teachers avoided eye contact. One or two offered sympathetic nods. But no one spoke. Cowards in dress shirts. Cowards with tenure. At his car, Marcellus sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, staring at the building. He thought of the prototype still on the lab table, the unfinished code on his laptop, the students he wouldn't see again. Then there was a knock on his window. It was Tanya again, eyes sharp despite the weight she carried. She passed him a folded note. Someone told me to give this to you if today went sideways. He unfolded it. One line, handwritten, midnight, don't stop building. He looked up. Who gave this to you? Tanya hesitated. I didn't get a name. Just a voice. Deep. Calm. Eli. Of course it was Eli. He looked back at the building one last time. They had cameras. They had authority. They had headlines. But he had something else. He had a blueprint. And now, somewhere hidden past the reach of permission slips and politics, he had a meeting at midnight. Marcellus clutched the note, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Whatever was coming next, it wouldn't be in a classroom. It would be underground. The note was folded once, ink smudged from someone's palm. It read like a whisper rather than a command. Midnight! Don't stop building. Marcellus stared at it until the streetlights blurred outside his windshield. Then he started the car and drove, not home but toward the only place that made sense. Downtown, the city library stood half-lit, a monument more forgotten than celebrated. Generations had passed through it, but no one stayed. Its architecture, once grand, was now flaking under time's indifference. It had been a safe haven in Marcellus's childhood, a place to disappear between the stacks. The front doors were locked, as expected. But beneath the rusting iron staircase on the east side, a single side door stood slightly ajar. No sign, no light, just darkness. Marcellus slipped inside. The hallway was cold and damp, lined with posters from long-past reading drives and educational fairs. It led to what once had been a reading wing, a forgotten annex below ground level, shuttered a decade ago after city budget cuts. As he reached the final staircase, a faint hum reached his ears. Generators, machines, people. At the bottom of the stairs, a flickering light bulb cast long shadows on cracked tiles. And there, seated around folding tables covered in wires, keyboards and soldering kits. We're 8 people. Students, mostly. Some no older than 14. One clearly in his 20s. A few wore hoodies, others oversized coats. All eyes turned toward Marcellus. And in the middle, standing like he'd been waiting all along, was Eli. "You made it," he said, not smiling, but something close. Marcellus blinked. "What is this?" "Phase 2, Eli replied. It took Marcellus a moment to find words. "Who are they?" Eli gestured to the group. "Former students. Some dropouts. Some suspended. Some just unseen. A few found each other through forums. Some through Tanya. Word spreads fast when you're invisible. They've been coming here at night. Learning, building. I showed them what you showed me." A girl with thick braids and a quiet gaze stepped forward. "You're Mr. Kane," she said. "You're the one who fought back." "I didn't win," he said. "You didn't quit," she corrected. Marcellus looked around the room. Desks scavenged from closed libraries. Shelves lined with used textbooks. Monitors salvaged from recycling bins. In one corner, a boy no older than 15 was debugging code, with an intensity that belied his age. Another was constructing a drone from cardboard and motors. "Where did all this come from?" "A few donations," Eli said. "A few hacks. One of them," he pointed to a lanky boy in a patched hoodie, "knows how to get government auction tech for pennies." "And the space?" Eli nodded toward the far wall. "Old archival room. No cameras. No funding. The city forgot it exists. We reclaimed it." For the next few hours, Marcellus stayed, not as a guest, but as if waking up from a long sleep. He moved from student to student, asking questions, offering insight, marveling at their raw talent. The girl with braids, her name was Anaya, had designed a solar-powered filtration system that ran on repurposed gaming hardware. The boy debugging code, Jalen, was training a neural net on environmental data he'd scraped from weather satellites. Another, Manny, spoke little but had assembled a wearable ECG monitor using copper tape and a broken smartwatch. "This," Marcellus whispered, "this is what they were afraid of." Eli nodded. "This is what happens when you give the overlooked a lab." In the days that followed, they returned again and again, always after hours, always through the side door. The hidden STEM school beneath the city library had no sign, no license, no stamp of approval. But it had purpose. Marcellus wrote a new curriculum overnight. Compressed, raw, and hands-on. No tests, no grades. Just projects. Challenges. Mistakes that taught. Eli took charge of advanced analytics. His quiet authority commanded respect. He never raised his voice. Never used titles. But when he solved a problem no one else could, the room always paused in awe. They had no budget. But they had Tanya. She found them online donations. Old laptops from Reddit tech communities. Books from Facebook groups. Even a retired data scientist who dropped off Raspberry Pi kits one afternoon without giving his name. Anaya created a 3D printed badge for each student. Shaped like a circuit chip, engraved with the words, "We build, we don't beg." Every night, they built more. Prototypes, platforms, simulations. They ran experiments using materials others threw away. Marcellus documented every breakthrough on a private drive, in case they were ever found out. But what they couldn't hide was the change. Students who'd been silent were now debating optimization strategies. Kids who had been labeled distracted were solving logic puzzles in record time. One teen who had been expelled for disruptive behavior presented a full-scale physics simulation of ballistic arcs using only free software. Eli watched it all. Quiet, present. He rarely spoke about the past. But sometimes, late into the night, he would say things like, "Publishers won't print your name if they don't think your story fits their narrative." Or, "They only call it cheating when you get ahead too fast." One night, Marcellus asked him directly, "Do you think it would have been different if you had someone like you backing you then?" Eli didn't answer right away. Then, "I think I wouldn't have been so surprised when the system failed me. Maybe that would have been enough." Marcellus nodded. "Let's make sure they're not surprised." A few weeks passed in this underground rhythm. Days filled with normal life, nights filled with radical education, and then, without warning, something shifted again. Anaya stayed behind after the others had left one night. She looked nervous. "I did something," she said. Marcellus straightened. "What?" "I entered us in the National STEM Horizon competition," she said quickly. "Under a school name I made up. Rising Light Academy." He blinked. You. What? I used a throwaway email. I submitted the prototype we built. The air quality prediction model tied to the drone sensors. Marcellus stared. That model had been a collaborative effort among 6 students. It was good. Better than good. But national? I didn't ask. Anaya added softly. Because I knew you'd say no. Because it's risky. Because it breaks rules. It does, he said. Every single one. She looked down. I'll pull it if you want. He didn't answer right away. His mind spun about visibility, exposure, safety, but also about voice, about being erased again. Finally he asked, when are the results announced? Anaya exhaled. 2 weeks. They don't check accreditation until after the shortlist. He nodded, slowly. Then let's make sure it's bulletproof. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that one of the judges on the National Competition Committee had already flagged Rising Light Academy as suspicious, and a quiet investigation had begun. The email arrived on a quiet Thursday evening, just after the last student had slipped out of the underground lab, and the lights had dimmed to a soft hum. Subject: STEM Horizon Regional Results. Finalist notification from National STEM at Horizon Challenge. To Rising Light Academy at gmail.com. Congratulations. Your submission, Predictive Drone-Based Air Quality Index with Adaptive AI, has been selected as a regional finalist in the Horizon National STEM Competition. Your team will proceed to the national showcase in 3 weeks. Marcellus read it 3 times, heart frozen between disbelief and dread. He turned to Eli, who had just finished sorting wires near the 3D printer. It happened, Marcellus said, voice low. We got in. Eli didn't flinch. He just nodded once. Then the clock starts now. The following week became a blur of preparation. Anaya led final testing on the drone sensors. Jalen refined the AI model's interface, building a slick front-end simulation that visualized atmospheric data across city blocks. Tanya coordinated presentation materials and crafted a mock website for Rising Light Academy, complete with fake teacher bios and a fictional charter code number. It was all smoke and brilliance, but the deeper they got into it, the more Marcellus felt the shadow of reality catching up. He knew national competitions didn't just look at projects, they audited schools, verified identities, cross-checked enrollment records. And Rising Light Academy didn't exist. Not on any district map, not on any private school registry. Should we pull out? He asked Eli one night, alone in the lab. Eli shook his head. They've ignored real schools full of kids like ours for decades. Let them come find us now. The validation came fast. 2 days later, Horizon's regional director posted a tweet celebrating the project, calling it a remarkable convergence of data science, environmental justice, and youth ingenuity. Within 48 hours, the tweet had been picked up by STEM educators, climate activists, and a few viral accounts who loved the underdog angle. Still, one detail gnawed at a Horizon committee member named Darlene Mitchell, a retired STEM consultant and former district superintendent. She'd seen hundreds of applications in her career, but Rising Light Academy didn't ring a single bell. She opened the Horizon registration database and typed in the charter ID number listed on the application. No match. She tried the email domain. It bounced. Then she ran a basic search through New Jersey's Department of Education site. Nothing. Most people would have shrugged. But Darlene Mitchell had spent years navigating fake tutoring companies, ghost nonprofits, and STEM programs designed to win grants without actually helping children. She made a note: verify Rising Light Academy. Meanwhile, down in the basement of the city library, the team worked like there was no tomorrow. Anaya printed mock school IDs. Manny spray-painted a blank laptop case with the school's fictional logo. Tanya rehearsed the presentation a dozen times until her voice cracked. We're not lying, she insisted one night. We're just proving we belong. Eli sat in the back of the room, expression unreadable. It only feels like lying because they never believed we were real to begin with. 3 days before the showcase, Marcellus received a strange phone call. A man identified himself as part of the Horizon Verification Committee. We'd love to confirm the location of your school ahead of the national press packet, the man said. We're profiling finalists. Marcellus froze. It's undergoing renovations, he offered. We've been operating from a temporary learning facility. Can we stop by for photos? Marcellus stalled. Let me check with the site director. We'll follow up. He hung up and looked at Eli, who had heard the entire exchange. They're coming. Eli didn't blink. Then let them come. The next morning, 2 Horizon field auditors arrived in a black Toyota, with Horizon badges clipped to their lanyards. They followed the fake map Tanya had uploaded to the website. It led to an empty lot. An hour later, they tried the fallback location listed, an outdated office complex where Manny's aunt worked part-time. It was locked. Frustrated and suspicious, one of the auditors ran a reverse image search on the staff photo Marcellus had submitted as lead instructor. It linked to a local news story. Teacher suspended amid controversy at Meadowbrook High. That's when the Horizon Committee escalated the issue. Back in Boston, Darlene Mitchell made the call. "There's no such thing as Rising Light Academy," she said flatly. "But someone's behind this. We find them, now." She contacted the Newark Department of Education, forwarding the application files. A staffer noticed the name Marcellus Kane and immediately connected it to the recent Meadowbrook scandal. "Wait, that's the guy who went viral," the staffer said. Within hours, a private investigator contracted by Horizon was dispatched to Newark. Quiet, professional, armed with a list of possible addresses tied to library maintenance workers. Someone had traced Eli's old employee ID back to the city archives. The investigator arrived at the library around 6:15 p.m. It was closing for the night. He waited until the staff left, then circled to the side entrance. The door was ajar, flashlight in hand. He descended the old stairwell. His boots echoed down the damp corridor. At the bottom, he found the annex, dimly lit, filled with soft murmurs, screens and the sharp scent of soldered metal. He peered around the corner. Inside, a dozen students were gathered around a table. A drone hovered overhead, blinking lights reflecting in their eyes. A banner read Rising Light Academy, Prototype Lab. He pulled out his phone and began recording. Then he stepped forward. "I'm with the Horizon Foundation," he announced. The room froze. Marcellus turned slowly from the whiteboard. Tanya instinctively closed her laptop. "We're preparing for the showcase," Marcellus said cautiously. "You've submitted under a false identity," the man said. "This is fraud." "This is necessity," Eli said, stepping from the shadows. "You only took us seriously because we used the right name." The man didn't respond. Instead, he ended the recording and pressed a button on his earpiece. "Found the location," he said. "Calling it in now." Outside, the soft echo of distant sirens began to roll in, growing louder with each second. The sirens weren't loud at first, just a murmur, like a bad feeling pulling up in the distance. Marcellus froze mid-sentence, marker still in hand at the whiteboard. The students didn't move either. Some glanced at Eli, who stood perfectly still, eyes narrowing. Then the building trembled. Not a real shake, but a sense, a shift in the walls. Boots on linoleum, metal on glass. Authority descending. Tanya was the first to speak. They called the cops. Eli walked calmly to the far wall and clicked off the overhead lights. Phones down. Projects hidden. Leave the doors unlocked. His voice had no panic, only precision. "You've got 60 seconds. Go." But they only had 42. The basement door above them burst open. Shouted voices echoed down the stairwell. "Police! Hands visible. Everybody down." The students dropped what they were doing. Jalen kicked the drone under a desk. Anaya slid a laptop behind an old cart. Tanya reached for her backpack, then paused, fingers brushing against a hidden switch stitched into the strap. She flipped it. Her camera lens, buried inside the decorative pin on her hoodie, activated. The live stream began. Viewers. The cops came down fast. 4 uniforms. 1 plainclothes detective. None of them looked surprised. Their eyes didn't scan for danger. They scanned for confirmation. "There they are," one muttered. "Just like the tip said." "On your knees," shouted another, aiming at Marcellus first. "I'm a teacher," Marcellus said calmly. Hands raised. "This is city property. You're trespassing. This is a city library. This room was abandoned. We restored it." Eli stepped forward. "He's telling the truth. These kids have done nothing wrong." "You're the janitor, right?" the plainclothes officer snapped. "That explained the city tech we found listed under your old ID. You running a scam?" Eli's face didn't twitch. "We're running a school. Fake school. Stolen equipment. Unauthorized use of facilities. Let's go," the officer barked. The first officer grabbed Marcellus by the arm. "You're under arrest for trespassing, fraud and theft of public resources." Tanya's livestream blinked to 6 viewers. Then "Sir, please," Marcellus said. "There are minors here. At least speak to the students. They'll be released to Child Protective Services, the second officer muttered. We already called them. What? Anaya cried. We're not criminals. The plainclothes officer yanked Eli's arms behind his back. Don't resist. I'm not resisting, Eli said, even as the cuffs clicked too tight. Tanya's stream hit 73 viewers. Her voice remained low, steady. They're arresting the black teacher and the janitor. They haven't asked a single question. They didn't even ask who we are. The students were herded into one corner. One officer shoved Jalen toward the wall. Keep your mouth shut, genius. Stop, Marcellus said, twisting in the officer's grip. They're just kids. You're going to ruin them. The officer sneered. With your little pity projects and pretend institutions, be a janitor like your buddy, and stay in your lane. The live stream hit. The moment that broke the flood open wasn't violent. It was subtle. A student cried quietly as her laptop was smashed under a boot. Another officer muttered, loud enough to be caught on mic. Let's shut this little hood experiment down for good. Tanya's voice cracked. You hear that? That's how they see us. We're not Meadowbrook, so they think we're expendable. 2,300 viewers. Comments flooded the stream. What the hell is this? This is a STEM raid. Tag CNN. Tag Sean King. Tag everyone. Then, without fanfare, the officer holding Marcellus shoved him against a table. Not hard enough to draw blood. Just enough to remind him who was in control. This is what happens, the officer whispered, when you go off script. Tanya didn't flinch. You're all live right now. Every word. Every face. The officer turned toward her. Just as her viewer count crossed 7,000. She didn't blink. Say it again, please. Silent. The mood changed in the room. A radio crackled on one officer's belt. Dispatch stand by. We're receiving multiple media requests. Streams gone viral. Cease escalation. What? He barked into the radio. This was off the books. Not anymore. The plainclothes detective's phone buzzed. Then again, he stepped away, swore under his breath. Pull back. Now. What? We've got a problem. National outlets. They're watching this. Suddenly, the cuffs weren't so tight. The officers were stepping backward. One muttered to another. We didn't sign up to be a headline. The last thing the stream captured before Tanya ended it was Eli looking directly into the lens. His words were clear, steady, devastating. You came for broken laws, but you just broke something far bigger. The next morning, the footage had 2.3 million views. Headlines read, Cops raid secret STEM lab for black students in Newark library basement. Innovation or insubordination. Viral stream shows police storming DIY science school. They arrested a teacher, a janitor, and a future. The mayor issued a formal inquiry. City council members called it deeply troubling. Civil rights groups demanded charges be dropped. An online fundraiser for Rising Light Academy raised $180,000 in 12 hours. But the biggest shift came in a short, stunning statement posted at 2:14 p.m. from MIT's verified Twitter account. The actions taken against Mr. Marcellus Kane and Mr. Elijah Booker reflect not institutional enforcement, but institutional fear. We stand with them and we see the future they're building. Chancellor Meredith Caldwell. Marcellus sat in his apartment, ankle monitor still blinking, laptop open, an email pinged in his inbox. Subject, faculty invitation. MIT Applied Innovation Department. Body. We'd like to meet. Quietly, at first. The email sat unopened in Marcellus's inbox for nearly 2 hours. He stared at it the way someone stares at a fire drawn to its heat, wary of its danger. Subject, faculty invitation. MIT Applied Innovation Department. From Chancellor Caldwell's office. It felt surreal, even cruel. The invitation came just days after he had been cuffed in front of children, accused of theft and fraud, and paraded through headlines that couldn't decide whether to call him a hero or a cautionary tale. But someone else had already decided. While public debate brewed across social platforms and think pieces, some defending Marcellus, others demanding accountability for his unauthorized teaching, a name began to trend beneath the noise. Congresswoman Ayanna Miles. She hadn't spoken publicly since the raid, but when she did, her words rippled. Standing before cameras outside the Newark Public Library, the very one that had hidden Project Horizon under its feet, she didn't read a prepared statement. She spoke from memory. I was 15 the first time I ever solved a differential equation, she said, her voice calm but cutting. I didn't learn it in a private classroom. I learned it from a man who swept hallways between classes, because the system thought his hands belonged on a mop, not on a whiteboard. The reporters leaned in. That man was Eli Booker. He taught me when no one else noticed I was even capable. He handed me a science journal when everyone else handed me detentions. And now, 3 decades later, this country watched him arrested on live stream for continuing to do what this country failed to do: educate the underserved. Marcellus watched the clip from his living room. So did Eli, miles away, quiet in his silence, tears gathering but not falling. I am demanding, the Congresswoman continued, that all charges be dropped against Mr. Booker and Mr. Kane immediately. I am demanding the Department of Education review the racial disparities in disciplinary policies in Newark's school system, and I am calling on the Department of Justice to investigate the police response to what was, by every definition, a classroom. It was a stunning escalation, one that forced the district into uncomfortable light. But Meadowbrook's school board didn't flinch. The next morning, Superintendent Ronald Petty appeared on national television with practiced indignation. "We understand the public's emotions are high," he said. "But Mr. Kane knowingly ran an unsanctioned, unsecured, and unregulated lab. The school has policies in place for a reason: to protect students. If we allowed every educator to operate rogue classrooms beneath public buildings, we'd be failing our duty to provide safe, structured learning." The anchor pressed him. Even if the students were producing nationally recognized STEM projects. Petty's jaw clenched. There's a difference between talent and procedure. One doesn't excuse the other. Behind the scenes, emails leaked from the district's internal messaging system showed even more revealing language. One from Petty read, "We need to reframe Kane's project as reckless. The racial angle can't dominate the conversation." Another, "STEM isn't the issue here. Control is." Public opinion split down predictable lines. Some praised the underground lab as revolutionary, a blueprint for breaking institutional inertia. Others warned it set a dangerous precedent, portraying Marcellus as an unvetted educator, whose actions undermined established educational oversight. Cable news debates erupted. Editorials clashed. Petitions bloomed online, both for and against reinstating Marcellus and Eli. One conservative columnist called Rising Light Academy a glorified hacker den. A progressive outlet called it the school America needs. Through it all, Marcellus stayed silent. He didn't give interviews, didn't reply to emails. He read every article, watched every clip, but he spoke only to the students, quietly, privately. They had been scattered since the raid. Some parents were terrified. A few students stopped responding altogether, but most kept showing up, at odd hours, in hidden spaces, in parking lots, in libraries. They wanted to keep building. And Eli? He returned just as quietly as he'd vanished. One morning, Marcellus found him seated on the steps of his apartment, holding a paper bag with tools. "MAT called," he said, nodding to the email Marcellus had ignored. "I haven't responded yet," Marcellus admitted. "You afraid it's a trap?" Eli asked. "I'm afraid it's a test, that they want to give me a title so they can say they're not the enemy." Eli smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes they hand you a stage so they can point out how clean your shoes are, instead of how filthy the floor still is. Marcellus stared at the bag in Eli's hand. "What's in there?" "Plans. For something permanent." That evening, in a secret space loaned by a community pastor, the students gathered again. They weren't the same kids from weeks ago. They were sharper now. Hungrier. Harder. Tanya showed Marcellus a 3D schematic for a portable solar desalination unit. Jalen introduced him to an AI dashboard he'd coded for mental health intervention alerts. Anaya had sketched blueprints for a traveling STEM trailer. "If they won't let us have a building, we'll have wheels." They were ready, but the system wasn't done fighting. The Horizon National STEM Competition Committee issued a new press release. Due to irregularities in the application, Rising Light Academy would face a special review. Marcellus expected this. What he didn't expect came at the very end of the statement. Despite challenges in verification, the finalist team from Rising Light Academy has demonstrated innovation that cannot be ignored. "We have decided all teams will present live at the National Showcase. This includes Rising Light." It hit like a shockwave, a door not just opening but slamming off its hinges. Tanya screamed when she saw the news. Jalen fist bumped Anaya until her knuckles turned red. Eli just looked at Marcellus and said, "So, you still think it's a test?" Marcellus didn't answer. Not with words. He grabbed the whiteboard and started drawing again. Hundreds of miles away, Superintendent Petty saw the announcement too, and picked up the phone. "We need to stop them," he said, "before they get on that stage." The day of the National STEM Showcase arrived like a storm front. Quiet at first, then crashing through every part of Marcellus's body. The event was held at the sprawling Hawthorne Convention Center just outside D.C., a cathedral of steel and glass, designed more for tech expos and corporate galas than high school science fairs. Outside, banners flapped in the wind. "STEM Horizon National Finals. The future is in their hands." Marcellus pulled up in a van, donated by a community sponsor. It was matte black, duct-taped in 2 places, and humming with energy inside. In the back were Anaya, Jalen, Tanya, Manny, and 2 new students who had joined after the live stream fallout. Each one held pieces of the prototype in their laps. On paper, they were students from Rising Light Academy. In truth, they were rebels carrying brilliance in cardboard boxes. Eli sat in the passenger seat, silent. His suit was the same one he'd worn to a friend's funeral 10 years ago. It still fit. "You good?" Marcellus asked him quietly as they neared the check-in entrance. Eli nodded, eyes fixed ahead. "I wasn't built for closure," he said, "but I'm good at starting things." Inside, the convention center buzzed with tension. Teams from across the country lined up for badge verification. Banners for elite magnet schools stretched across booths. Redstone Collegiate, Preston Tech High, St. Evans Robotics. Students wore matching uniforms. Coaches held clipboards. Sponsors handed out branded flash drives. The Rising Light team walked in wearing thrift store blazers, mismatched shoes, and ID tags printed on cardstock. Tanya clutched the only remaining prototype drone like it was a living thing. At the check-in desk, Marcellus stepped forward, shoulders square. "Team from Rising Light Academy," he said. The staffer, white, mid-30s, wearing a Horizon Committee lanyard, typed something, then frowned. "I'm sorry, your team has been cleared, but you are not listed as the coach on site. I submitted the updated chaperone credentials 2 days ago," Marcellus said, reaching for the printout in his folder. She didn't take it. "I have instructions not to issue a badge under your name." "What?" "You've been flagged for pending legal matters," she added, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry, I can't let you enter as a staff member. You're not allowed inside the main hall." Behind her, 2 security guards stood watching, hands on hips. Anaya whispered, "They're doing this again." Eli stepped forward, slow and steady. "Let him through. He's the instructor." The staffer stiffened. "Are you Mr. Elijah Booker?" Eli paused. "I am." Her eyes narrowed. "You're also flagged for trespassing on city property." One of the security guards stepped closer. "You can leave on your own, or we can escort you out." The students closed ranks instinctively. Marcellus's heart thudded. Not here. Not again. Not now. He looked at the team. Their faces flickered between fear and fury. Tanya clenched her fists. "You let abusers into classrooms. You let cheaters win. But we can't even walk into a science fair?" Eli gently touched her shoulder. "We're not doing this at the front door." "But we go around," he said quietly. One of the guards laughed. "There is no around." Eli looked at Marcellus. "You remember Calvin Dobbs?" Marcellus blinked. "From MIT." Eli nodded. "He's here. Tech exhibitor. Booth 12. Let's go." They turned away from the table. The staffer shouted after them, "You don't have permission to re-enter." But Eli was already moving, the students trailing like shadows. Booth 12 was in a quieter wing, where college vendors and tech donors showed off VR goggles and learning platforms. And there, behind a booth for a wearable EEG headband, stood a tall, bearded black man in a navy pullover. "Calvin," Eli said. The man turned and his face lit up. "You're alive." They embraced quickly. Then Eli stepped back. "We need an entrance. Back of Hall C. Staff corridor. Do you still have that badge override?" Calvin didn't hesitate. He reached under his table, pulled out a badge on a red lanyard. "You'll only get 30 minutes before they audit logs." "That's enough." Calvin looked at Marcellus. "You're the one who didn't stop." Marcellus nodded once. "Then go make them listen," Calvin said. They rerouted through a side corridor lined with folding chairs and mop buckets. A service elevator took them up 1 floor, spitting them out behind a curtain near the main stage. The lights were bright. The applause was distant. The Horizon MC was announcing the next team, from Rising Light Academy. a finalist entry exploring adaptive AI for real-time environmental hazard modeling. Tanya squeezed Marcellus's hand. They walked out. The stage was vast. 10 judges sat in a semicircle, each holding a tablet. Behind them, cameras streamed the showcase to national audiences. The students began. Anaya opened with data. Our drone doesn't just monitor air quality. It predicts toxicity spikes based on weather, traffic, and industrial emissions. It was tested in a high-risk zip code, with asthma rates 2.5x the national average. Jalen followed. We trained the AI on both open-source environmental data and live collected sensor data. It adapts based on real-time patterns. Think wildfire spread, urban smog traps, chemical leaks. Manny launched the drone, which hovered smoothly, blinking green. It can cover a 3-mile radius in under 30 minutes, relay readings to an app, and auto-trigger public alerts. The judges nodded, murmured, typed. Marcellus stood just off stage, eyes locked on the students. Eli was near the curtain, arms folded. It was flawless, a presentation built from broken pieces, stitched together with defiance. When the applause came, it started slowly, then grew. But just as the students prepared to step off, one judge raised her hand. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled into a bun, posture severe. You're not on any of the official registries, she said, voice calm. Your school does not exist. Your team isn't state certified. Your instructor is banned from entry, so I'll ask you directly. She paused. Let the silence hang. Who are you? The stage lights pulsed above them. The audience leaned forward. Tanya stepped up to the mic, glanced at Marcellus, then said, We're not from a school you'd recognize. We're from one you'd never dare build. The lights above the stage burned white and relentless, throwing long shadows across the carpet. Tanya's words, We're from one you'd never dare build, hung in the air like an echo. No one could catch. The judges shifted in their seats, tablets poised, cameras zoomed in, broadcasting the tension live. Then, quietly but unmistakably, Eli stepped out from behind the curtain. He moved with a calm that was almost unnerving. The students parted instinctively, as though they had known this moment was coming even if he hadn't told them. Marcellus froze, breath held, eyes locked on Eli's back. Eli reached the center of the stage and took the mic from its stand. The gesture wasn't aggressive. It was deliberate, ceremonial, like someone lifting an artifact from a sealed box. My name, he said, his voice low but carrying, is Elijah David Booker. The room stilled. No coughs, no whispers. Just the sound of the drone's soft whir, still hovering behind the students like a watchful creature. I was once a graduate student at MIT, Eli continued. Second year, computer science department, predictive modeling. My work was cited in journals before I even defended my thesis, but I never got to defend it. He paused, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the gray-haired judge who had asked the question. Her brows lifted slightly, as if she had just recognized a ghost. I was expelled in 1994, Eli said. Officially for violating community standards. Unofficially, for refusing to let someone else take credit for my work. I was told my presence was disruptive, my tone aggressive. They revoked my funding, erased my access, and my advisor published 2 of my papers under his own name. My name was footnoted, then forgotten. A murmur rippled across the audience. Reporters at the back began scribbling furiously. One cameraman zoomed in closer. Eli didn't flinch. After that, doors closed fast. Fellowships disappeared. Offers vanished. I couldn't get hired at community colleges. Couldn't even get a recommendation letter. Eventually, I stopped trying. I took a custodial job to survive. I swept floors while the people who stole my work built careers on it. For 30 years, I taught quietly. Kids no one noticed. Kids no one cared to rescue. Until Marcellus Kane walked into Meadowbrook High and refused to believe this was all we deserved. His voice cracked slightly on that last line, but he steadied it. They call this a fake school, Eli said, gesturing to the students. They call these children unqualified. They call this space illegal. But look at what they've built without a dime of your funding or a moment of your respect. This isn't a lab. It's a future you tried to bury. There was a rustle near the judge's table. The gray-haired judge raised her tablet, eyes wet. Mr. Booker, she said, voice trembling. I know that name. Eli turned to her. I was a postdoc at MIT in the 90s, she said. We all knew about you. We saw what happened. We didn't stop it. We didn't even ask. Silence. Then she stood. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice firmer now. For the record, I can confirm Mr. Booker's identity and his contributions to early predictive modeling research. Everything he's saying is true. A gasp moved through the audience like a tide. Students from other teams craned their necks. Reporters whispered to one another. The cameras caught every flicker of disbelief, recognition, shame. Eli lowered the mic slightly. It's not about me anymore, he said. It's about them. He gestured to the rising light team. About what happens when you stop waiting for permission to create. About how many voices you've already lost, because you didn't like the way they asked to be heard. The first applause started from the back. A small clap, tentative. Then another. Then a third. And suddenly the entire hall was on its feet, clapping. Some even shouting. The sound rose like a storm. Anaya covered her mouth, tears streaming. Tanya grabbed Jalen's arm. Marcellus felt something inside him loosen. A weight he hadn't even known was there. But Eli didn't smile. He knew how quickly applause could turn into something else. And he was right. The doors at the side of the hall swung open. A cluster of suited figures entered, led by none other than Principal Hargrove. His face was a mask of fury and performance. 2 district lawyers flanked him, holding folders. The applause faltered. Cameras swiveled. The MC froze mid-step. Hargrove marched down the aisle and stopped at the edge of the stage, his voice cutting through the noise like glass on tile. This ends now, he barked. This so-called academy is a fraud. This man is a disgraced former custodian, and these children have been exploited under false pretenses. The students recoiled. Tanya whispered. He's here. How did he? Hargrove raised a thick envelope. We have filed an injunction with the competition committee. Any presentation from this group will be considered null and void. Furthermore, legal action is being initiated for misappropriation of public resources and misrepresentation. Gasps from the audience. One judge put a hand to her forehead. Another murmured. You can't be serious. I am dead serious, Hargrove snapped. This is not a stage for sob stories. This is a competition for legitimate institutions. Eli stood silent, his hand still on the mic. Marcellus stepped forward, ready to speak, but Eli gently raised a palm to stop him. The room was a powder keg. Applause had turned into whispers. Cameras rolled on, hungry. And then, unexpectedly, one of the judges, this one a young black physicist with a shaved head, stood and addressed Hargrove directly. Sir, you're interrupting a sanctioned presentation. I'm interrupting a fraud, Hargrove snapped. You will thank me later. No, the judge said slowly. I think we're done thanking you. A ripple of applause at that. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. You're all complicit in this farce. You think a live stream and a sob story make you heroes? This isn't justice. It's a stunt. He stepped closer to the stage, pointing at Marcellus. And you, when this is over, you'll be finished. You'll never teach again. I'll make sure of it. Hargrove reached into his envelope and pulled out a signed court order, his trump card, and held it high under the stage lights. By authority of the district, I am halting this presentation immediately. The room felt like it had been cracked open. Hargrove's voice still echoed from where he had held the court order aloft. But something had shifted beneath him. A slow, tidal pull of a story slipping out of his control. The gray-haired judge spoke first. Principal Hargrove, your injunction is not recognized here. This is a national showcase, not a district event. A murmur of assent rippled through the judge's table. Another judge, the young black physicist, added. And the committee has reviewed the accusations. We've found no evidence of student endangerment. Hargrove's face flickered with disbelief. They're not even a real school. Then maybe the real school failed them, the judge replied. It was the line that tipped the room. Applause rose like a wave, rolling over Hargrove's fury, swallowing his legal paperwork whole. He turned on his heel and stormed out, his lawyers scrambling after him. When the doors closed behind them, Eli still stood center stage, mic in hand. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just exhaled like someone who'd been underwater for 30 years. The MC cleared his throat. We will, proceed with judging deliberations. But first, on behalf of the Horizon National STEM Committee, he glanced down at his tablet. We have a message from MIT Chancellor Meredith Caldwell. The screen behind the stage flickered, then displayed a live video feed. The Chancellor appeared in a modest office, wearing a navy blazer. Her voice was even, but her eyes glinted with something harder. Good afternoon, she said. I have been following the story of Mr. Marcellus Kane, Mr. Elijah Booker, and the students of Rising Light Academy. What I saw was not a violation of education. It was education at its most urgent. Eli blinked once, slowly. MIT, the chancellor continued, is formally extending full scholarships to every student in this program. Their choice of department, their choice of study, beginning this fall. Gasps rippled through the hall. Tanya clapped her hands to her mouth. Anaya's knees buckled slightly. Manny whispered, full ride, as if the words themselves were a foreign language. And to Mr. Elijah Booker, Caldwell went on, we acknowledge, belatedly and insufficiently, the harm done to you. Today you are reinstated to our alumni honors roll. Your work is being cited again, and we are inviting you to return to MIT, not as a custodian, but as a research fellow, mentor and co-lead, on our new Community Innovation Initiative. Eli gripped the mic tighter. His jaw flexed once. Then he whispered, 30 years. The chancellor's voice softened. Not enough. But it's a start. The hall erupted. Students crying, reporters scribbling, judges wiping their eyes. A banner headline appeared on one live stream chat feed. The janitor returns as a fellow. Marcellus turned to his students. You did this, he said quietly. You built something so undeniable they couldn't ignore you anymore. But what about you? Tanya asked. You're the one who built us, the chancellor's voice resumed, as if she had heard them. Mr. Kane, MIT would be honored to bring you on as a faculty member in our Applied Innovation Department. You would have full access to our labs, full funding for your projects, and a platform to scale your vision nationally. The hall hushed again. Cameras turned. This was the cinematic moment. Underdog redeemed, villain banished, hero crowned. But Marcellus didn't step forward. He stood very still, his eyes on the students rather than the screen. Eli turned toward him. This is your chance, he said softly. You've earned it. Marcellus looked at Tanya, at Anaya, at Jalen. He saw their eyes shimmering with hope, but also something else, fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear that the man who had fought for them would now disappear into an institution that had never wanted them. He turned back to the mic. Chancellor Caldwell, he said, his voice clear but low. Thank you, but I can't accept. Gasps. Reporters leaned forward. A judge muttered. He's refusing? You're declining a faculty position at MIT? The MC asked, incredulous. Yes, Marcellus said simply. Because if I take it now, the narrative becomes about my redemption, not their future. This project wasn't built to get me a job. It was built to prove what they can do without permission. Silence stretched. Even the drone hovering behind them seemed to pause midair. I'll partner with MIT, he added. I'll work with you. But from here, from where they are, not from behind another gate. Eli's eyes flickered with both pride and something like pain. You're sure? I'm sure, Marcellus said. If I walk into that tower now, it's just another story of a good one getting rescued. That's not the story I'm telling. Tanya's lips trembled. Then what story are we telling? Marcellus looked at them all. Their thrift store blazers, their homemade name tags, their brilliant restless eyes. He reached into his bag and pulled out a rolled set of papers, bound with a rubber band. A bigger one, he said. He snapped the rubber band off and unrolled the sheets across the judge's table. Architectural diagrams, lab schematics, solar arrays, classrooms, dorms. What is that? Anaya whispered. A blueprint, Marcellus said quietly, for a permanent campus, built by us, funded by no one who wants to own it. Open source curriculum, open doors, a place they can't shut down because it's not hiding under a library. The hall was silent again, but this time the silence felt electric. Reporters' cameras clicked. The judges exchanged glances. The students leaned in, eyes wide. We're not done yet, Marcellus said into the mic. This isn't the end, this is the beginning. Unseen by them, in a boardroom across town, Superintendent Petty sat watching the live stream on his tablet. His phone buzzed with a message from Hargrove. They're planning something bigger. We can't let it happen. Marcellus woke that morning to a litany of alerts on his phone. His email inbox overflowed. Messages from reporters, from students, from strangers moved by the lab raid footage. News outlets had turned a spotlight on the district. He rubbed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. The world had changed overnight, and it was no longer just about a secret lab and a suspended teacher. He stepped into the living room where Eli stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. The early sunlight caught Eli's face and brought out lines, older now, but dignified. Eli didn't look at Marcellus when he spoke. "They're coming." Marcellus braced himself. "Who?" "Everyone." Eli turned. Television vans outside the board offices. Local journalists in the lobby. Social media activists mobilizing. They've started digging into every school in the district, especially any whose leadership demographics don't match the student base. Marcellus swallowed. He thought of how the project had always been about equity, bringing resources to students denied access. Now the push was turning the lens on the district itself. They arrived at the district headquarters to see a wall of cameras and reporters. The board president, Dr. Constance Walder, had scheduled a press briefing at noon. Board members were flanked by district communications staff in navy suits, trying to stand firm. Principal Hargrove was ushered toward the back, looking pale and jittery. Marcellus stayed behind the press line, Eli by his side, shuffling forward as though gravity were pulling them in. When the cameras zoomed on the board, voices clamored. A journalist called out, "Dr. Walder, is it true that minority teachers in your district are systematically marginalized? Are there records of disciplinary actions disproportionately affecting them?" Walder's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then nodded to her PR staff. A man in a gray suit took the mic. "We are cooperating fully with investigations. We take allegations of racial inequity very seriously." Another reporter, "Is Principal Hargrove on administrative leave? When did you place him?" Walder exhaled so hard her shoulders shook. "Effective immediately, Principal Hargrove is placed on paid administrative leave pending an independent inquiry." A hush trembled through the crowd. The principal brought low by the day's momentum. As the press scrum erupted, Marcellus swallowed his astonishment. He thought about the countless times Hargrove had mocked, dismissed, ignored. Now the district was under pressure to shield itself, and Hargrove was the easiest decoy. By afternoon, Marcellus sat in the underground lab's fledgling office, once a derelict library wing, but now walls were plastered with news clippings, hand-drawn charts, and timelines. The team of students clustered around him, scanning their phones, whispering hopes and fear. One girl, Karima, exhaled in relief. "They're listening." Another student, Jalen, scratched the poster of their prototype rocket program. "Is this real?" he asked, voice trembling. "They can't shut us down now, right?" Marcellus looked at them, not as a teacher dictating hope, but as a human standing with them. "They can try. But now we have proof. Now there's skepticism on their part. The community is watching." Eli appeared, closing the door behind him quietly. He carried a stack of files. "I got records from internal whistleblowers," he said, dropping them on a table. He tapped the top sheet. 2 columns of data, names, disciplinary notes, performance reviews. "See these patterns? Notice how minority teachers are flagged for vague infractions, lack of collegiality, resistance to standard pedagogy, unprofessional communications. But comparable white teachers got away with lateness, insubordination, poor outcomes, with no consequence." Karima leaned in close, eyes wide. The data was gruesome. Rows and rows of teachers, Black, Latin sheeted differently, names she didn't recognize but faces now exposed. Marcellus placed a hand over hers. "This is the foundation of the case." He turned to Eli. "Do we have witnesses?" Eli nodded. "A few are willing. Faculty who saw things. Meetings where Black teachers were excluded, emails ignored, committee assignments denied. They fear retaliation, so they ask for anonymity now."
"Good," Marcellus said. "We move carefully."
Across town, in a sleek glass building, downtown, the law firm of Benton and Yarborough was meeting. On a polished table lay printed copies of the raid footage, school board minutes, the whistleblower data, and the viral live stream. One of the senior partners, Marisa Benton, flipped through the documents. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID, Marcellus Kane. A small smile crossed her face. She'd been following his story since the viral event. She sent it to voicemail. "Just as I thought," she said to her colleagues. "This is bigger than one district. This is precedent. This isn't just about the underground lab, or one principal. This is about institutionalized erasure of Black educators." She turned. "We accept. We'll file a federal civil rights complaint. The statute is strong. Title VI, Title VII, equal protection. We'll ask for discovery, demand board deposition, Push for injunctive relief so your lab can reopen. She addressed a junior associate. Draft the complaint tonight. Contact ACPT, Association for Civil and Public Trust. We need allies, media, and leverage. One associate raised a question. What about backlash? The powerful people in this district will resist. Lawsuits, countersuits, smear campaigns. Benton's eyes glinted. They already started that. We anticipated it. But the public is with us now. The board just put Hargrove on leave, its own implosion. We'll use their panic to push for accountability. Unexpectedly, in the next folder Benton opened, she saw a schematic documents from the underground lab plans. She frowned. These were sent from inside. She tapped a line. Who leaked these? Her partner shook his head. Doesn't matter yet. It means someone on the inside wants exposure. That twist bolstered her. Someone deep within the district infrastructure was possibly rooting for change, or betraying it. In Marcellus's apartment that evening, he tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. His phone lit up with more news alerts. Education Department launches inquiry into district finances and educator assignments. Parents demand transparency on teacher retention and equity. District Board President Dr. Walder resigns amid pressure. Hargrove placed on administrative leave. Controversy mounts. He scrolled to one article. Dr. Constance Walder resigns in wake of scandal. Board in turmoil. Inside a photograph, Walder walking out of the board offices, head bowed, clutching a binder. Her resignation was published midday. The board announced a transitional president would step in, pending election. Marcellus's stomach twisted. The top layer of leadership was gone. It was the kind of seismic change he'd dreamed of, but with power vacuums come danger. Eli knocked softly and entered. Don't sleep. I've been working on deposition prep. Whistleblowers are ready. Attorneys want to pick them soon. Marcellus nodded. Numb. Do you think we'll win? Eli paused. He looked older now, haunted but resolute. Not just win. Change the baseline. Make this district a case study. Force every district in the state to audit their own systems. They sat in silence, hearing the whir of the city beyond their hidden windows. Just then, Marcellus's phone pinged. A message from Benton in Yarborough. You have been contacted by a civil rights law firm. Let's discuss next steps. Marcellus's heart pounded. He handed the phone to Eli. The firm is ready, he whispered. Eli exhaled. The next move is our most dangerous. We file the complaint. We release internal documents. We demand justice. But they'll fight back harder now. They'll call us radicals. They'll try to bury us legally and morally. Marcellus nodded, steeling himself. We're committed. We're in. They looked across the table at the students' faces, projected on the lab wall. Hands typing, code compiling, rockets sketched, futures imagined. Eli's eyes went to the wall of news clippings. This will change everything, he said softly. Marcellus's phone buzzed again. A news alert. Board scrambling. New interim president called an emergency meeting tonight. Eli turned to him. They're panicking. That's when mistakes happen. Marcellus swallowed, voice firm in the dim room. Then we prepare, because when they come for us next, they won't expect us to hit back. He exhaled. But as they braced themselves for the legal war escalating ahead, Marcellus felt a flicker of dread, not for himself, but for the students. At that moment, his phone vibrated again. A new message. Meet here. Urgent. It was a location pin, one they hadn't shared yet. Marcellus's hand froze over the screen. Eli's eyes narrowed. That's... He didn't finish the sentence, because at that very moment, a black SUV pulled up outside the lab's secret entrance, and headlights washed through the cracked window. Marcellus looked up. Eli pressed a finger to his lips. Someone was coming. And it was clear. The war was no longer just legal and moral. It was about survival. As the SUV door opened, and a stern-looking figure stepped onto the lab's threshold, Marcellus felt a chill. Who would dare find them here now? The morning sunlight found its way through cracks in the low ceiling of the underground lab. What once had been a neglected, shadowed reading wing was now humming, wires strewn, workstations alive, walls glowing with charts, screens, and the names of students who had once walked the margins. The transformation felt miraculous, a phoenix rising beneath the surface. Marcellus stood at the entrance, watching students pour down the stairs, arms full of laptops, tools, and notebooks. He could almost pinch himself, It felt surreal to watch this hidden space breathe and live. He turned to Eli, who smiled softly. The lines on his face deepened, no longer just the weight of the past but of renewal. The first day, Marcellus said. Official opening. Eli nodded. No fanfare. Just work. They had drawn up accreditation documents. A charter, a non-profit education umbrella, and a governing board with community leaders. The paperwork had come through late last night. With grants approved and donors committed, the lab would now function as a fully licensed academy, the Kane Innovation Academy. At once, clips of the opening announcement began to circulate. Local news, online tech press, philanthropic networks. New Black-led innovation hub launches in former high school complex. Read one headline. From clandestine lab to cutting-edge academy. Another. Inside, students fanned out. Some tinkered on robotics. Others coded in virtual reality simulations. A group debugged AI circuits. Posters of Newton, Ada Lovelace, Katherine Johnson, and local black engineers lined the walls. An entire corner was dedicated to community outreach. Plans to host free weekend workshops for neighborhood school children. A middle-aged woman, wearing a suit and carrying a tablet, entered through the stairs. She was Dr. Farah Yates, a tech investor and philanthropist who had been following the viral lab saga. She clapped quietly. You made it real, she said. Her smile held awe. I pledged funding for the next 5 years. I want labs in other city sectors too. Marcellus's heart stuttered. He gestured to Eli, to the students. We did. Together. Even as gratitude washed over them, a tremor of doubt lingered. They were beyond hidden operations now. Every victory made them more visible, more vulnerable. By midday, a donor reception was underway in an adjacent chamber remodeled into a gallery of prototypes and renderings. Local tech leaders, education reformers, and philanthropists filed in, sipping coffee and mingling. Reporters snapped photos. A crystal chandelier, inexplicable but fitting, hung over display tables. The interim board president of the district was there, walking through with hesitant steps. He paused, watching a student demo a drone. The student explained, voice shaking at first, but then confident. This drone helps deliver medical supplies in disaster zones. Cost-effective, efficient. A tech CEO asked pointedly. And this is all built by high schoolers, in an underground old library? Yes, Marcellus answered. And soon, we hope, by students across the country, under our satellite model. A murmur ran through the room. The CEO nodded, impressed. The interim board president cleared his throat. He approached the stage, hesitated, then addressed the gathering. This is impressive. We did not see this coming. His lips trembled as he glanced at Marcellus and Eli. We will support its growth. There was applause, but behind the scenes wheels were still turning. District lawyers, rivals, old board members, company interests threatened by innovation hubs, disrupting status quos. Marcellus smiled stiffly, gratitude and caution mingling in his chest. He stepped down and met Eli's eyes. Eli gave the barest nod. The moment was precious, but fragile. That evening, in the lab's central hall, students gathered to celebrate. Food, laughter, music, low-key but saturated with relief and pride. Someone projected a slideshow, from humiliation to revolution. When one janitor and one teacher built a vision, the faces on the slides, smiling, determined, were the proof. Marcellus navigated through the crowd, stopping to shake hands, hug students, offer encouragement. He found Karima and Jalen together, eyes shining. You see? He said quietly. We're real now. She squeezed his arm. You believed. Jalen, with newfound confidence, whispered. I want to design a solar-powered water purifier next. Marcellus felt tears pricking. This was the reward, the purpose. Later, Eli led a small group into a side room. They huddled over documents, blueprints, and financial forecasts. He tapped a page. The donor round for expansion is set. We'll open satellites in 2 neighboring districts next year, if all goes well. One student raised a concern. But what if the old powers fight us? Lawsuits, district interference. Eli's jaw clenched. They already are. But now we have standing. We're accredited. We have legal backing. Marcellus watched as they went through contingency plans, legal teams, PR responses, scandal buffers. He realized this marvel they'd built now needed armor. The next morning was a quiet calm before the storm. Marcellus walked through empty hallways before students arrived. The lab was still, charged with potential. The drip of a water pipe echoed. He went to Eli's office, where Eli was already seated at his desk, reviewing bond documents. Eli, Marcellus said softly. Eli looked up, brows furrowed. There's something I didn't tell you. Marcellus's stomach tilted. What? Eli slid a folder across the desk. On the cover, Board Legal Counsel, Confidential Memorandum. Marcellus opened the folder. Inside were draft memos from the district's legal department, months old, discussing ways to suffocate minority-led projects, budget review mechanisms, limitations via accreditation audits, reallocation of resources to favored schools, and legal challenge to naming rights. Each memo was signed by the district council. You knew? Marcellus said, voice tight. Eli nodded. I uncovered it while going through internal records. This systemic resistance has been mapped out for years. Our fight was never just for this lab. It was for every program that dared to level the playing field. Marcellus closed the folder. Rage, awe, and sorrow churned inside. There was a knock at the door. A woman entered carrying an envelope. She looked official, suited, stiff posture. She gave a curt nod to Eli, then to Marcellus. From the district headquarters, she said. They insisted I deliver it personally. Eli's face paled. Marcellus's heart thundered. He extended a hand and took the envelope. It's addressed to you, she said quietly to Marcellus. He looked down. The envelope bore the presidential seal. A murmur echoed through his mind. White House. Eli stood, rigid. The students in the hallway paused, sensing tension. Marcellus rose, hand trembling, and slit the envelope's flap. He withdrew a single sheet of paper thick with ink and protocol. His eyes scanned the words. He swallowed. A bead of sweat traced his temple. He looked up at Eli. They want us at the Capitol, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Eli's eyes widened. They read everything. Marcellus looked out at the still empty lab, the machines quietly humming, the walls alive with dreams. He folded the letter with shaking fingers. This is bigger than the district now. We're in the national eye. Silence pressed around them. Then, at the doorway, the woman cleared her throat and spoke in a flat tone. They want your full address and travel plans by tomorrow. They said the nation is watching. Marcellus's breath caught. Tomorrow? The woman nodded, then turned and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Eli stared at the sealed letter. You realize what this means? Marcellus nodded, voice steady. Yes. They want the founding voices on record. They want the story, but if they want to control it, they'll try to rewrite it. He folded the letter again and tucked it into his jacket. He turned to the students behind him, their eyes fixed. This is our moment. The road gets narrower now, but we walk it together. And as they stood in that lab, a hive of invention, of black brilliance, of hope forged in secrecy, the letter in Marcellus's hand felt like both a blessing and a threat. Suddenly, his phone pinged. He glanced down. A single message, no name attached. Just a time and address, 10 a.m. Capitol, room 2. Marcellus turned to Eli. They've made it official. Eli's lips parted, then pressed into a line. We accept. Marcellus exhaled. But even as he braced for the moment to come, a creeping suspicion slithered in. Is someone in our circle betraying us? Because in the donor reception last evening, someone had been unusually attentive. Someone had asked too many questions about internal funding, legal counsel, and future scalability. He looked at Eli, and their eyes met, shared silence. Because now the question was not just how to ascend, but whom to trust. As the students glanced at the sealed letter in his pocket, Marcellus felt the weight. Tomorrow they would step into a hall they had never dreamed of entering. And yet in the dark someone watched their lab cameras. Someone ready to take everything if they misstep. Marcellus woke before dawn. The hush of morning pressed against his window. The letter from the White House lay on his desk, unopened in the quiet hours. Today was the day, the culmination of every hidden lab meeting, viral live stream, legal filing, and whispered fight. They would speak at the Capitol. He dressed in a crisp suit, tie in muted blue, and as he buttoned his jacket he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. In the mirror he saw a man tempered by storms, yet standing firm. He caught his reflection and allowed himself a breath. We made it. Eli appeared in the doorway, gentle as ever, but alert. His eyes betrayed fatigue, but also purpose. Together they stepped into a car waiting outside. The students accompanied them, some in suits, some in lab jackets, carrying prototypes, tablets, and dreams. Among them was the youngest, a 12-year-old coder named Imani Pierce, whose algorithms in their AI module had stunned judges at the Nationals. She was small but poised, with unshakable calm whenever she coded. On the drive through lined avenues and security checkpoints, Marcellus studied the letter in his jacket pocket. He hadn't read it fully yet. He wanted to keep it surprise for the moment. He glanced at Eli in the passenger seat. "You ready?" he asked quietly. Eli nodded. "As ready as ever. This is the place to demand truth." Students in the back murmured, their eyes scanning the passing cityscape. Imani sat near Marcellus, head bowed, fingers tapping at the edge of her notebook. He offered her a gentle smile. She nodded in return, small but certain. They arrived at the Capitol building. The grand columns, the steps, the flags, all felt heavier now, charged with expectation. Security ushered them through corridors, past stale portraits of past presidents, into a grand chamber brimming with officials, lawmakers, journalists, and invited guests. The air hummed. Inside they sat behind a long dais. Marcellus and Eli in the center, flanked by Imani and the student team. The chamber quieted. Light from tall windows fell on faces, expectant, some sympathetic, some skeptical. The president sat across, a slight smile on his lips. He rose and nodded for Marcellus to speak. Marcellus stood. His throat felt like sandpaper. He swallowed, then exhaled. He looked out. Faces of senators, representatives, press, families, students, cameras. "Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished members of Congress, honored guests, and most importantly, the students and families who believed, despite every barrier, that a dream could be built in secret and emerge into daylight." He paused. His eyes flicked to Imani, Jalen, Karima, and the others. "I stand here not as a lone teacher, but as part of a movement led by young minds who were told they lacked access, told their schools didn't care, told their brilliance was invisible." He cleared his throat. "Years ago, I pitched an after-school STEM project. The principal mocked it, calling it a pity parade. People laughed, doors shut, buildings ignored me. But those who stood behind me, those students who showed up day after day, and a janitor, Eli Booker, who solved math problems I thought beyond him, they believed." A murmur rippled. He turned to Imani. "This is Imani, age 12. When we needed the AI module to handle advanced differential coding, she didn't hesitate. She stayed nights. She debugged algorithms. She made breakthroughs. She reminds us that race, age, and circumstance are not limits, unless we allow them to be." Imani rose and stepped forward. Her small voice clear and unwavering. "Thank you for believing in me. I am here to say that if we invest in students who look like me, who live like me, we can build not just a lab, but a future for every child left behind." Her words landed like stones in the chamber. Some eyes glistened, some stiffened. The weight of silence that followed was alive. Marcellus resumed. "We came here today to demand federal support for innovation academies in underserved districts nationwide, to demand policies that dismantle structural bias in funding, accreditation, teacher support, and resource allocation, to show that when we invest in the brilliance of every child, entire communities bloom." He paused, letting his words echo. "But I want to acknowledge someone very few in this room know. Eli Booker. Many knew him once as a custodian. Few knew he held a 30-year-old MIT paper under his name. Few knew he was expelled unjustly, erased from his path. But he didn't vanish. He persevered quietly, mopped floors while quietly solving equations. He is here today as proof that brilliance cannot be contained." Eli stood then. The room hush tightened. He began, his voice steady, dignified, rich with memory. "As a young man, I walked corridors of ambition and promise. I dared to dream, until a racially charged expulsion erased my place. Doors closed. My name vanished from opportunities. I cleaned buildings to survive. But I never let my mind lie dormant. I studied, decoded, remembered. When Marcellus came, when these students came, I poured all I had into them." He paused, and the chamber held its breath. "What we built in a hidden library wing, that isn't just for them. It is for every child told they don't belong. For every teacher silenced. Every mind uncultivated. Today we demand this hub be the blueprint, not the anomaly." The room stayed still, walls heavy with the undercurrent of truth laid bare. Then Marcellus stepped forward again. We propose a national grant fund, anchored in equity, to seed Black-led innovation hubs across America. We propose oversight boards with community voices. We propose that no school district escape audit for structural bias. We demand that from today forward, every public school must be a place of possibility, not just for some, but for all. He looked out, voice rich. Let our children, our Imanis and our Eli Bookers, not only walk through the doors, let them design them. Tears glistened on cheeks. Some in the audience wiped them away. A few stood, clapping. Some faces that had been impassive now faltered, moved. The chamber felt smaller, more intimate. The president rose. He motioned for quiet. Cameras clicked, flashes flickered. He nodded slowly, then spoke. This is one of the most powerful testimonies I have ever heard. Today we must change the story of American education to a story of justice, of inclusion, of faith in every mind. He turned to Marcellus and Eli. You've given us truth, you've given us shame, humility, and hope. I am proud to invite Kane Innovation Academy to partner in a federal initiative I intend to propose tomorrow. A roar of applause filled the chamber. Students wept, parents wiped tears. Reporters raised microphones. Cameras panned. A reporter rose, voice sharp. Mr. President, may I ask, how did you first hear of this story? The president paused, gaze steady. He raised a hand. My son, gasps. He saw the video. He waited. He said, Dad, you need to meet the janitor who solved MIT equations. Silence. Then a thunderclap of reaction. Phones flickered. Reporters scrambled. Audience members looked between Marcellus and Eli. Marcellus's heart hammered. Eli's face softened. Relief, vindication, recognition. The president's voice carried. So I did. In that moment, as the room seemed to tilt on the axis of that revelation, something subtle shifted in the crowd. A re-evaluation, a collective breath. The grand chamber felt small now, intimate, chained. Marcellus looked at Imani, eyes wide. Eli's lips quivered, a tear falling. They had come full circle, from mockery in a principal's office to the Capitol's podium, and yet the battle had only begun. Below the dais, cameras flashed. A television crew pushed forward, pressing for follow-ups. Questions flooded the air. Will the bill pass? Which districts qualify? Who leads the oversight? Marcellus swallowed, but his voice steadied. He stood taller. Let them ask. Let them listen. As the applause swelled again, the full-circle truth echoed in the chamber. A janitor, erased for decades, now stood in the light, and the man who erased him was discovered by a child's video. The crowd erupted. But somewhere in the noise, behind the press seats, behind the cameras, a slender man slipped away with a small device. A hidden recorder, a flash drive, one no one saw leave. And as Marcellus, Eli, and Imani stood on that stage, embraced by hope and scrutiny, the shadow of betrayal lingered, waiting for its moment. So many voices like Marcellus and Eli never get heard. Not because they're wrong, but because they refuse to stay silent. If this story moved something in you, don't let it stop at the screen. Type yes if you believe brilliance should never be silenced, and subscribe if this broke your heart.